What time is it over there now? 7:30?
1934.
Nice.
We'll blame Facebook. Facebook's been very glitchy lately. Bloody Zuckerberg. Are you eating in the middle of a live?
This is what happens when you're 8 months pregnant. You're just
8 months now.
Hungry. Yes.
Ooh-wee. How you feeling? You doing good? You okay?
I feel good. I'm just hungry all the time.
Yeah. Listen, that's it. I remember at the last classic zoo pharmacology. We can go live if you want, whenever you're ready.
Oh yeah, we're on.
Oh, we're on now. Okay, good. No cursing. No cursing, Ruby. But during my the last baby, Elaine had this crazy need of apples from the fridge. Never ate an apple before, never ate an apple after. And I just thought that is classic zoo pharmacology. Like, this person needed something in apples, and God help me if there was no apples in the fridge cold. I mean, that was the end of the day. I never ate an apple since. Like, isn't that weird? So there's something in apples I need to explore. But yeah, that's cool. So you're feeling good? You're ready to go? Good on you.
I am. I'm feeling great. I'm so happy to have you on today. Welcome to all of our guests. Conor is joining from Ireland, right?
Yes.
You're home, right? At this time. Absolutely. I think we have viewers from all over the world. Would love to hear where you guys are joining from. Comment below. We're diving into a slightly controversial topic today. And so I think thanks, Fiona. Oh, Fiona's here, our favorite friend. So thank you guys for tuning in. While we're waiting for people to tell us where they're joining from, I want to remind everyone that Conor is coming to sunny San Diego this October for the Feed Real Summit. How excited are you? When was the last time you were in the States?
Last time I was in the States, I was on my honeymoon. No, maybe, yes. Last time I was in San Diego. Yeah, I was in San Diego. Did I not see San Diego? Maybe I did. How do I not know that? It's like when people say they come to, like, when we kind of laugh and we say when Americans come over here, you have to do Ireland, Scotland, England. You have to do a lot of things in your week. And so you go to Dublin for a day and you go to Kerry for a day, and we kind of laugh and go, you couldn't see anything in that. But we do the exact same thing when we hit the West Coast. Like, we just do the entire West Coast in 2 weeks. So I can't actually remember like the difference between some of the cities and towns. So, like, anyway, so that was 8 years ago. I loved it.
Oh yeah. Well, perfect. Oh, yeah. You're gonna love it. You're not gonna want to leave, and you're gonna kick yourself for not coming to visit me sooner.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait to be treated like a king and meet everyone. Meet everyone. Nick's going to be coming with me, so that'll be fun. We're bringing Bren, and then we're going to be meeting Rodney and Karen and seeing you again, Ruby. I can't wait. We had great fun the last time we met up. Where was that? In the UK somewhere?
That was in well, not London. What was that small little town just north of there for the
I don't know.
Expo somewhere, but we had a good time.
Yeah, that was great fun. I loved it. Yeah. So,
well, we've got viewers from all over the world, from the UK, from Nashville, Tennessee, from Luxembourg.
Cool.
California, Michigan. Awesome. So yes, Conor's going to be at the summit this October. That is the 5th and 6th here in San Diego. And there are just a limited amount of tickets left. So act now and get on that if you guys want to be able to attend. So today we're going to be talking about AAFCO and the complete and balanced myth. I dusted off my favorite book in the world, which is this Feeding Dogs book. You see how I've got it all marked up?
Excellent take. Yeah, good on you. You got quite far into it. That's it's quite a project.
I know. Well, I did snooze a little bit on some of the parts, but I managed to make my way through.
That's wonderfully honest of you, Ruby. Thanks very much. We can edit that out later, maybe.
Chapter dedicated to AAFCO and the pet food police. So this is a pretty passionate topic, I think, for you to talk about.
I love the darkness. I like the darkness of it. And that was
you have a course on this as well that you teach about AAFCO and the complete myth.
Yeah, the whole complete kind of word, it's a word that we don't have in human nutrition. We're just taught. We started this off with Ruby, soon to be a mommy, and like literally the only complete food on the planet that ever existed is breast milk. It's literally the only complete food out there that we have. And, they tried to bring out a complete product after that with baby formula, which is great, plays a role. And God, isn't it great for some people? Okay. All we're saying is it's not as good as breast milk. So we have these ads saying, when you choose to follow on, that took 30, 40 years of campaigning to get to kind of put Nestle to step back. It's one of the reasons why Nestle is the most boycotted company in the world. It's because of their very vigorous. They stayed with it, and said, well, no, it's great. Well, thank you for your efforts, but it's not quite the same. It's not complete. And so, so that's kind of should tee us up for where we are. I mean, they put so much effort. Nestle, the people that make pet food, Purina, they poured money into making this product. So we call it Aptamil over here, or Aptamil, or whatever it's called. And it's still not quite as good as the real thing, because it just can't replicate all the incredible little factors in nutrition and growth factors and antibodies. It's just, you couldn't imagine how complicated that is. So we have the kind of large picture. We'll pick these molecules out, types of fats and proteins, but there's a whole world going on in there that we just don't understand, and how they interlink with each other. And that's a pretty good tee up to how close we are to finding complete nutrition for dogs. I mean, do you think that they found the product for dogs and they didn't find the product for human babies? I mean, no,
it's impossible. And we're going to dive into some of the nutrients, like the minimum nutrient requirements. But let's take a step back a little bit. I know there's AAFCO, which is the quote unquote regulatory agency that's not really a regulatory agency here in the States. But there's also FEDIAF, which you guys have over in the UK.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, talk us through that, because I thought FEDIAF really followed AAFCO's lead in some of those requirements.
It is. It's like AAFCO 2.0, but not really. It's AAFCO 1.0001. Even to take a step, let's take one more step back and talk about that word regulation there, because you do have a regulatory body in the US. It's called the FDA. And the FDA are food and drug regulators. That's their job. And in there came pet food. And there wasn't much pet food regulation until the 1970s, and a massive scandal hit US pet food. And we can only imagine it was happening in the rest of the world, but we don't have any regulation in EU at the time for pet food. So in the 1970s, tens of thousands of cats and dogs were going blind and dying of something strange that they hadn't seen before. Tens of thousands of these animals were dying. And they were getting the emails. FDA were getting a lot of phone calls. And eventually they swing into action and say, okay, there's something wrong with pet food. And what they found out, after being told by thousands of pet owners, they found out that there was very little taurine in pet food. In other words, there was very little meat in pet food being used anymore. It was just full-on cereal. It was very high cereal. After the war, they invented this dry pet food, extrusion cooking, all came from World War II. But you ran out of tin, ran out of meat, so they ground up a lot of cereal, meat flavoring, and they made dry food. And you could say the recipe hasn't changed much since. But in the 70s, particularly cats were dying for the want of meat. And the amino acid in particular was taurine. This is why they still think today you've got to add taurine to everything. It's like, well, you got to add meat to everything because it's a carnivore. Taurine, the bull. So that was the 1970s. And to give FDA, they had a little branch called the NRC Guidelines, Nutrient Research Council. They were the group that formulated these guidelines in the first place. And they said, okay, guys, listen, here's a minimum standard. Your pet food, to call it complete pet food, which is the word they started using at the time, to use that word, you got to hit these minimum standards. That's the minimum amount of protein, 18%, plucked out of the air, let me tell you. And a number of other things.
Made it up.
Just 18%. My God. Yeah. Like, listen, people will get annoyed about that. People that truly believe in these figures. And you'll go, okay, let's show me the studies, because I have a chapter on it. But when you look at the studies, it's protein alone I'll touch upon it later, because it's so bad. Because considering it's the most important nutrient, you think they'd have the most information behind that? Darth. It's just a desert with one of those little things blowing through it, whatever you call that thing. But tumbleweed, isn't it? Yeah, but anyway, so the NRC, 1970, good idea, tens of thousands of cats and dogs, and they lift pet food up off the floor. So now, if you want to be pet food, you have these minimum requirements, and that saved a lot of dogs' lives. So that's a good start, the NRC. By 1980, the FDA realized minding all these pet food companies was difficult. And so, as the FDA tends to do, they thought, well, maybe we'll just hand over the control of this to industry. And so AAFCO was born, the American Association of Feed Control Officials. And this is essentially a group of the 6 people on the board. I think 4 of them were pet food company employees at the time. Ralston, Purina, and a few others, big names. And they said, "We don't worry, we'll mind our section." So vampires guarding the blood banks, you might say. And so that was, and they ran with these minimum guidelines, and those guidelines have changed hardly at all. I mean, you might say FEDIAF have made some improvements. Instead of 18% protein, we say over here 21% protein. And instead of 22% protein for puppies, we say 25% protein. And bar that, there's just virtually nothing. There's a few changes in selenium recently, like who cares? And a few other bits and pieces. So AAFCO's been running with these minimum nutritional guidelines. And these guys, as you said, they're not regulators, they're advisors. They advise and say, look, if you want to say complete, 100% complete and balanced, absolutely perfect this product is for your dog at your feet, how could they possibly know what your dog needs that day? I mean, maybe he had a bad day. You know what I mean? Maybe he's a bit stressed. Anyway, so AAFCO's been minding the place and putting out these minimum nutritional guidelines for the last 43 years. And they don't have any regulation. They can't sue you. They can't bring you to court. They don't have any advisors. They don't have any investigators. They don't test products. Nothing. So to have that stamp in your bag is questionable. AAFCO have a few rules. We can talk about their guidelines and their little not time trials, but feed trials and stuff. But that's the start of it, and it doesn't get better than that.
And I want to talk about those feeding trials, but for many veterinarians, they will say when they recommend a food to look for that complete and balanced stamp. And how do you I mean, I know you've had your share of run-ins with different vets, especially with promoting a natural canine lifestyle and food. I mean, how does a consumer have that conversation with their vet when you say, should I be looking for a complete and balanced food, or, how do I know that I'm actually meeting my dog's nutritional requirements?
That's tough. That's a tough question. I wish that came at the end. It's like, talking with vets is kind of difficult on some topics. There is a problem that the vets are having in that they have these nutritional lectures, a very tiny handful of nutritional lectures. Some colleges still in the US not giving any. And so they have a tiny handful of nutritional lectures when they're 19 years old. And they given by pet food companies, because the pet food companies run that end of things in the veterinary departments. And we've got multiple freedom of information requests and whatnot to prove that. It's not a lie. We're not saying that to be mean. It's how it works. Universities need huge amounts of money, and the veterinary departments get that from dry pet food. How do you know who sponsors your veterinary department? Ring them up and ask them what pet food they sell. They only sell one brand. That'll tell you, So the problem is the vets come out with that idea, and then they have a couple of lectures on nutrition, one or two a decade from a dry pet food company to keep up their continuing education points. They have to hit 20 of these each year. And so you're not going to the Feed Real Institute for a lecture. It's a Hills rep giving a Hills talk about the next prescription dry food, even though there's no, prescriptive drugs in it whatsoever. So they do that and they fall for it. And so the point is, the vets totally believe that what they're saying is correct, and also that they're helping your pet. And they think that you are going to harm your pet. They totally believe that. They love animals. These kids are the hardest working people on the planet. They are good people and they love animals, and they totally see you as, oh my God, you are going to do something wrong and the dog is going to die. You could have walked in with 4 or 5 kids and they wouldn't have even thought about the fact you've been feeding them for the last 10 years. It's like that's a difficult thing to overcome, because the vet is the one in the know. A little bit of ego comes into it. Who could you be? You haven't been using Dr. Google again, and it's just this. So it gets very antagonistic very quickly. And so it's a tough question you have to get past that before you start talking about AAFCO. I mean, you know what I mean? You start talking about AAFCO, they don't know anything about AAFCO. If they did, they wouldn't be promoting dry food. If knowing about AAFCO and understanding how nonsensical every single one of the nutrient levels are in that. Some of them are based on pigs. No studies at all whatsoever. Nothing on microminerals, like from selenium, magnesium, manganese. There's absolutely zero studies. Nothing in puppies. So the same figures for puppies are for adults. Major glaring issues. If they knew that, if the vets knew that and just peeked behind the curtain and saw the mighty Oz peddling the machine, they'd instantly know, oh, there's actually nothing supporting this product. Then they wouldn't sell the product in the first place. If they're still selling it, that's the point. That question is so difficult. Like, it's so hard to get past the first gate, which is, we're not on the same page at all, let alone talking about AAFCO. They are not ready for that. Who are you?
Basically what you're saying is the nutrient requirements that are listed in AAFCO are not based on any sort of studies. We'll just say the majority of them, but companies are still trying to meet these requirements so they can put that complete and balanced stamp on their food.
Yeah, there's. I started. I was in. I didn't. Did I see you in Helsinki, Ruby? One year, didn't I? So last year in Helsinki, I was doing a talk on the link between nutrition and behavior, which was, that's my bag. So that I love doing that. And I put up a slide at the start and I said, I'm going to curse here, guys. And I said, all nutritional studies are shit. And I had a picture of Nick Thompson because Thompson always says that. But the point is, everybody in science knows that nutritional studies are the worst. They're the most, they're always wrong. There's always something wrong. For example, here's how, look, these are good nutritional studies, by the way, not the stuff that AAFCO's doing. AAFCO don't do studies, actually. It's the pet food companies do a few studies to defend their use of insert product. Anyway, so for example, if you want to talk about how good omega-3 is for arthritis, I mean, if you've got arthritis, take omega-3. And if you want to show how good omega-3 is, you get 100 Americans or 100 Irish people or 100 English people, all deficient in omega-3, and we compare them to 100 Mediterraneans who get loads of omega-3 in their diet. So 100 arthritic Americans and 100 arthritic Italians. Omega-3 will be really beneficial for the Americans, but it won't be very beneficial for the Italians. So if I was trying to sell omega-3, I wouldn't use Italians in my study because they've got enough omega-3. So one more example. If you want to show glucosamine and chondroitin is good for a dog, you do a study on dry-fed dogs because dry food has 0 glucosamine and chondroitin in it. And they are the building blocks of your joints. So dry food and the veterinary industry recommends that you take away all the building blocks, joint building blocks from a dog. Glucosamine, chondroitin, hyaluronic acid, no vitamin C in dry food, glucagon, glutathione, just not mentioned. That's what joint material is. And then your dog is starved of these materials and he's arthritic halfway through his life. What do they sell you? Ground up cartilage. Yep. So the point is, the studies show glucosamine and chondroitin is useful to a dry-fed dog. A raw-fed dog is getting copious amounts of this. There's no point piling up bricks outside that joint. If he's got stiff joints, it's for another reason. So, the nutritional studies, the studies backing the nutritional requirements, there are some studies behind it. But you're talking 5 or 6 pups, 2 weeks. And it's like, what? That's where you get the zinc figures from, and then the maximum is from swine. It's like, hang on, whoa, can we just go back to the minimum there? That was 6 so there is a tiny smattering of studies, but if people just want to start off with one thing, because they're going to get bamboozled by me talking about too much, because I'm getting red in the face, I'm getting wound up. But if they just wanted to start on one thing, they would go to the paragraph, the small... This book, right?
Oh, yeah.
Look how big this book is, okay? It's thousands of pages and references, very full of science, and the vets stand over this as the best book for it. And if you go to the paragraph on protein, you would think protein, biggest thing. I mean, if you were to break down the diet of a wild dog, a feral dog, free-roaming dog, and you think, okay, he eats a lot of animals. And you look at a rabbit and you suck all the water out of him. He's largely protein, and he's a bit of fat, and then a few minerals. Okay, that's what a rabbit is. So we can all pretty much agree that protein is the most important thing in the dog's life. And so you go to the section in this product, which is written by Hill's Pet Food, and you say, okay, where did you get the 18% protein for? Why are you going with the minimum amount of protein? Nobody would want the minimum amount of protein for their child. You'd want the optimum. So why are you using the 18%? And there's a single paragraph in this book. You have to read it to believe it. So if any vets believe in dry food, they want to argue about all the studies. Yes, lots of studies, but when it counts, show me the studies for 18% protein. They give 5 studies, and of those 5, 4 of them are more than 50 years old. And all they look at is nitrogen balance. In other words, how much they feed the dog and how much comes out in his poo. And they have a look at that. There's no health measures. They didn't even take bloods. They don't put a dog up on a treadmill with a gas mask and all this stuff that you think athletes would be doing. They don't run them in a sled dog trial, because when you do, studies show the more protein you feed a sled dog, the less injuries they get. The highest carbohydrate sled dogs had the most injuries. The highest protein sled dogs had the least injuries. They actually had none. So, that's where, if people want to understand the science and if they're interested in that kind of stuff, and I'm a nerd for that, just go to the protein section of the NRC or the Small Animal Clinical Nutrition, or wherever you think the nutritional Bible is, and look for the studies that tell you 18% protein is the best thing for a dog. Because that's what we're talking about here in the Feed Wheel Institute and Dogs First and everyone else, we're talking about the optimum. So you can stay there with your minimum requirements and your minimum amount of protein, because let's face it, carbohydrates are cheap. But if you think that's not true, show me the studies that say 18% protein is the best for dogs, because all I have is studies showing the more protein you feed dogs, the better they do. You know, the better the weight loss. I mean, cancer. Would you feed 50% bread rolls to somebody with cancer? I mean, pancreatitis, kidney disease, the more protein you feed a dog with stage 1 and 2 kidney disease, the better their kidneys function. I mean, there is no studies to say 18% protein is the best for anything. It's so.
Yeah. And the other thing that we see is for aging dogs, the common recommendation for senior dogs is to lower the amount of protein. And it doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, studies of nursing homes show your protein's got to be better, more protein and better quality, because you're getting worse and worse at digesting it. Why are they dropping that then? I didn't even think of that one. Why are you dropping the protein in older dogs? I mean, show us the studies for that. The more carbohydrates you feed, the better. It's disgusting. You know, it's so feeding the opposite to what you should be doing, particularly sick dogs. You know, when your dog has pancreatitis, you know, you got to get off the carbs now. We have all the studies to show the more carbohydrates you feed, the more fat builds in the blood. Rather paradoxical, but we don't need to get into it. And if with kidney disease, all the studies show the more protein you feed, the better they do, unless they're at the very end stage when protein's building in the blood. So it really bothers me that the veterinary agency hasn't latched onto that and said, you know, prescription dry food sold you 3 times the price, almost identical to the muck before it. That's such a rip-off from the owner. It's a rip-off of the pet that's eating the food. Dry food for kidney disease. Dry. When studies show cats on wet food do better. Oh my God.
Well, and you know, I know the NRC didn't develop any of those studies until the 70s, but back in the 40s, the Pottinger studies, do you remember that one where they did it was like cats that were fed a raw diet fared so much better than cats that were fed a cooked meat diet, and I think they added some like pasteurized milk. But what happened was those cats that were fed the cooked food stopped reproducing. They simply knew that it wasn't a healthy body and they couldn't continue that reproduction process. So they've known for quite some time, but done really what suited the industry, I think, more than what the science said.
Totally. It's the same with NASA. I mean, do you think, like, we don't have a complete food for astronauts? We don't have a complete food for the poor. You know, when it comes to when there's famines, there's Red Cross and a few others are on record as saying, no, we don't want dry food. Like, they're trying to give them, we'll eat kibble, it's complete. It's like, well, no, we want, you know, we'd rather feed them pure rice. It's just, there are so many issues with the idea of pushing this as complete. But like, the thing is, you just need a furious amount of science. Massive claims need massive amounts of science. And so the problem is we have a veterinary sector, much like our own human health sector, that believes they're backed by science, but they don't understand the science. They don't read the science. They think they know how to, but they just don't. Because if you did, they would understand their position. So what we have is an entire scientific group of people who have leapt support in dogma. It's pure dogma. They believe the high priest when he hands them the things on the stone tablets, and they go, okay, and then they go off and pass on the message. And they believe that, absolutely. And so it's very hard to challenge those people with science, because they say, well, we are backed by science. We don't, you know, you need to show us, prove to us that fresh food is good. And I'm going, hang on a second. I'm still over here in the normal camp. You've just leapt over there with this weird product. I don't have to prove anything. You're the one who has to prove your product is safe and nutritious. And we don't even need to get into the safety, but like the onus is now somehow on us to prove that real food is good for cats and dogs. It's so preposterous. It's so ridiculous. And there's about maybe 5 or 6 head-to-heads of value where they compare dry and raw-fed dogs, and every single one of them favors fresh and raw-fed dogs. Less skin disease, less inflammation, less ear disease, less gut disease. I mean, how many of these studies do you need before the Vet Times or one of these other industry rags puts those studies on the front page and goes, fresh food actually might be good for cats and dogs after all, you know?
Right. Well, unfortunately, we're seeing it's probably going to take some time. I want to switch gears a little bit into DIY and homemade food. I'm curious from our audience if anyone here is making their own food at home or if they're just doing pre-made, because I think we've already established that the complete and balanced stamp in that pre-made food perhaps is not the right standard that we should be looking for. But a lot of people these days are looking to make their food at home. What I have seen is, you know, you've got your diehard spreadsheet NRC warriors that are like, you've got to meet everything to the T. And there's a handful of vitamins and minerals that are almost always deficient, right? Vitamin E, I think, is a big one. Zinc.
Yeah, that's the two.
Manganese. Let's just start with those three. I mean, what is your thought? Like, should we be trying to add in, whether they're natural or synthetic supplements, to meet those AAFCO standards, or how should we be preparing our DIY food at home?
Those three are my favorite because I know something about them. So, you know, starting with zinc. So, you know, they use zinc oxide in pet food, which is the lowest form of zinc. The gut, I keep using this analogy. So if anyone's heard me talking about this before, I keep saying the same thing, but the gut membrane does not like minerals. Minerals are metals, okay? They're inorganic elements. Everything, calcium to metal, zinc's a metal, selenium, you know, copper, it all makes sense. They're all metals. And the body, the gut, does not like metals really, okay? They're not from the land of the living, inorganic elements, as opposed to vitamins, which are organic and they come through very easily. So you can supplement with vitamins and the body absorbs them quite quickly. Doesn't mean it's a good form of the vitamin, but the body takes it in. With minerals are different. So the body wants to see the mineral holding the hand of a carbon molecule. So in nature, when you eat minerals from eating meat and plant matter, whatever, there's minerals in there and they're bound to a protein, and the protein's invited to the party, and then the metal just gets to come in anyway, you know. So even though it's the metal is the nutritious thing, the body says, no, you got to be piled up with a protein. It's called chelation, okay? It's the way everything is found in nature. And if you eat your minerals chelated, you're fine. Think eating iodine as opposed to eating iodide and stuff put in pet food. That will put you on your ass. But when you eat it naturally in seaweed, the Japanese are showing you can eat many times your RDA and be extremely healthy. So it's not a threat. Same with most minerals. They come in waves. You're not going to overdose from eating a particular thing. You know, there's a lot of zinc in that cabbage. You know, good luck trying, you know. Anyway, so the zinc oxide, the crap, the cheap stuff, is zinc on its own. It's zinc rust, essentially. It's like iron oxide is exactly what it is. It's rust. And the body doesn't absorb that too readily. But it's really cheap. So the pet food companies really want to use it. So what they say is just use lots. And so now we've got studies that show the more of these crappy minerals you feed to animals, you can actually induce dysbiosis, because there's always bacteria in the guts going, ooh, we'll eat that. And now you're shifting the gut flora from, you know, you can't get away with feeding George Jetson food. That's just, your gut flora is not ready for that conical fast junk. So zinc oxide is hard to absorb. And the studies that they're using of dogs are dry-fed dogs fed zinc oxide. So that's what they think is normal. And so as a result, pet food has lots of zinc oxide in it. And so the requirement for zinc by AAFCO is quite high. It's 120 milligrams per kilo. And so you would look at that and go, okay, when you're formulating and you're kind of, let's go make a nice pet food, a raw dog food and all the bells and whistles, and this is going to be lovely. You measure the zinc and it's like 40. And it's like, oh my God, I'm so deficient in zinc here. What am I going to do? And so what happens is, because of these difference in readings, what we now know is natural zinc is absorbed way more readily. So you can have 40 milligram zinc, which is the exact same amount of zinc that's in a rat and a rabbit and a bird and a frog. They're in and around 40, 50, 60 milligrams per kilo. So that's what real pet food looks like. And instead, we've got this ridiculous 120 milligrams. So what that means is, if you want to get your AAFCO seal of approval, you have to start putting in lots of something containing a lot of zinc. So you start leaning towards your seeds and whatever else, and you get that zinc content up. So you've just made it not the way you wanted to make it to hit that zinc level. It's the same with vitamin E. The mixed tocopherols is 1/4 of the vitamin E hormone. And so not as readily absorbed as fresh vitamin E. So it's the same thing. You've got to go looking for vitamin E. Manganese, you need tiny amounts of manganese in your life, but manganese oxide is harder to absorb, so you have to jack it up a bit. So all raw-fed diets look a bit deficient in manganese when you look at AAFCO. And so when people use AAFCO to look at a raw dog food recipe online, they'll say deficient in manganese. And we'll say, according to who? Because the dog needs tiny amounts of manganese, and they get it from probably the amount of manganese in bones and ligaments and stuff, which is infinitesimal. There's not a lot at all. There's quite more manganese in skin and hair and hide and feathers and nails, but the dog can't digest that stuff. That's just like animal fiber. So the amount of manganese in a rat, rabbit, frog, that's the amount of manganese a dog probably needs. But good luck trying to say that, because you need studies. So we have to produce lots of studies, which is ridiculous, because if I wanted to prove how much manganese a dog needed, I would need 1,000 dogs, different breeds, different temperaments, different stressors, different ailments, and I'd have to run it for 20 years before I could even get an idea. Those studies don't exist. You don't do those studies. The other side will produce these Mickey Mouse studies of 5-6 dogs for 2 weeks, minimum studies and overdose studies, but I won't. As a proper scientist, I'll go, well, I can't prove that that's what it just makes sense. That's his diet, so that's what he needs, So that's the problem with making raw diets and trying to make them hit this AAFCO standard. But you got to do it if you want to put the word complete on your product, and you do want the word complete on it because owners will otherwise panic and not buy your complete raw dog food. So it's a game you got to play when you're in the raw world and go, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not happy about it.
What harm are dog owners doing, if any, making their food at home, trying to meet these requirements? I mean, is it any different than feeding a pre-made food that's already met them? Or, is there such thing as a zinc toxicity or, vitamin E toxicity? Yeah. What are they throwing off in that recipe?
I think on the plus side, right, I think that when people come off the back of dry food, they're so used to talking about percentages and they see molecules. It's like your shampoo's got amino acids in it. And it's like, what? Is my shampoo? I don't care. Just wash my head. So like when you come off the back of dry food, you believe that these exact percentages are right or your dog will get sick, as if you ever gave that a thought. When your baby's born, she comes off mum, it's like, what do I feed this thing? All it'll eat is pears. And it's like pears with cabbage, pears with spinach, pears with meat. And you find a few things that the baby will eat. But I don't know where the baby gets selenium from or manganese, let alone how she absorbs it, how much she got. We don't know that. So I think where the positive bit for the formulators and people that are hooked on that kind of way of thinking is that at least it does switch people on to thinking you gotta, if you're going to feed the dog yourself, or feed yourself, full stop, you should be thinking about that, because we are all terribly deficient in zinc. America, Ireland, UK, we are all suffering the same issues, and we're all way too much processed food in the diet, not enough fresh food, and the result
not enough organs.
Yeah, that's a big one. I've got an embarrassing story I'm going to tell about myself to give people some hope that everybody is an idiot, well, particularly me. But so we're all deficient in things like manganese, zinc. Like these are really important ones. Omega-3, too much omega-6 from all the seed oils and crap, not enough omega-3. That is inflammatory. And we would all be so much healthier if we gave the levels of these things in our body. Maybe we did a vitamin test or an omega-3 test to see where we are and then took action and fixed that. We would avoid a lot of chronic disease, but we don't get those ads on the TV. So I think that's the good side. That's like if the formulators push that into our brains and make us act a little bit. What is my vitamin D level coming into winter? If you want to dodge respiratory diseases, you better make sure your vitamin D is up there, about 50 and 60, whatever.
Yeah. I do want to hear your embarrassing story, but you made me think about something to touch on real quick.
Yeah.
A lot of these hair mineral analysis tests are available where you're essentially plucking a little bit of your dog's hair, you're putting it in an envelope, sending it off to the lab to get tested. And people are determining that their dogs are deficient in certain minerals because of this test, but the deficiency is based on this reference range, and the reference range is often used synonymously with normal or not normal, below average. But the thing is that reference range is a measure of all the dogs in the world or in the country that have been measured. The majority of dogs are kibble fed. And so if they're getting these additional vitamins and minerals from artificial supplements in these foods, then your raw fed dog, you're going to send in that sample, is going to appear below that reference range. And people always freak out about that, right? I just think it's an important note to make that it's not abnormal to be outside of the reference range. And it's very similar to what you're talking about in terms of nutrients. We think that's what they need, but says who?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to quote Bren here. Bren is a vet that I work with over in the UK. Brendan Clark and Nick Thompson, two of the best vets. And Bren is a man for testing, and he really pushes the idea that we have nothing to compare ourselves or our dog to. So when our dog is sick, let's say you have a gut flora reading, To take a gut flora reading from a gut sick dog is a bit ridiculous because his gut flora is totally out of whack. I was like, well, yeah, I know, it's all over my kitchen. I can see and smell the fact it's out of whack, and I'm after, I owe you how much for that? So the gut flora check when they're sick, whatever, particularly if they're perpetually sick, you get an idea. Maybe it's you got a really bad load of Clostridium person, take action. Okay, but it would be very nice that you had a gut flora analysis of the dog when he was healthy, because that's what your dog's gut flora looks like. You could, there could be my identical twin could be living in the US eating the exact same food we think, but actually these foods are grown in different soils. We have different stressors. We clean our houses with different chemicals. There are so many things that makes us different that there is no normal biome. You couldn't possibly tell me what my biome should be. So I know that the microbiologists, and one of them I'm working with here at the moment for something I'm doing at the side, she would say, no, we can look at the top level and we can give you some ideas of what to look for. But I think that's really important about the vitamins and minerals that you're saying about the hair, because I do like the hair test for like heavy metals, because the heavy metals, you can pretty tell from those hair analysis, it accrues in the body. And that's a good way. But for the vitamin and minerals, raw fed dogs are different. For example, protein. Conventional vets will take the blood of a raw fed dog, and it's 30% higher in protein readings like bun and creatinine and stuff. And they're markers of kidney disease in dogs. So when that goes really, really wonky, you'll go, the protein's a bit high. The kidneys aren't filtering the protein out of the blood. The kidneys must be packing in. So conventional vets are looking at raw fed dogs and they're concluding you're right on the line. You're in chronic kidney disease stage 1. And we'd say, no, that's what a normal raw fed dog looks like. When you feed a dog appropriately, that's what. So going down into the vitamins and minerals is something that people are talking about. It would actually start, wouldn't it? Now that you say it, people are always saying, why don't we have a AAFCO FEDIAF figures for raw? But they don't understand the sheer volume of science that would be needed for that in the studies. It's almost impossible to do. But what you could do is get the readings from 1,000 healthy raw fed dogs and go, there you go. There's your kind of curve, and show that's what normal bloods look like. I bet you they'd be completely different to what AAFCO are putting out there. That seems incredibly obvious. I can't believe I haven't thought of that before. I'm going to take that idea, Ruby. I'm going to pass it off as my own. We need to cut that. We'll edit that out later on if it's being done. Yeah.
Fiona has a good point here. She says it's important to take a baseline reference of your dog when they're healthy via the blood panel or the hair analysis, which I completely agree with. I do also want to open up the audience to questions for Conor, since he talks a lot and he talks fast. So we're going to have these in real quick. But comment line is open. So please drop in any questions you might have. Karen does not want me to encourage you to tell your embarrassing stories, but I am going to anyway. But a little bit off topic on that, for gut microbiome, FMTs, fecal matter transplants, are becoming increasingly popular. What is your thought on fecal matter transplants from dogs that are kibble fed to raw fed dogs?
Yeah, now I know. Now that you've said Karen's listening, because I don't get to see the comments. Now I'm going to have to credit her with this because she told me. So I'm all for FMT. I think it's absolutely amazing. Fecal microbial transplantation. I think it's great. And I think it's been done for thousands of years. I think it's been done for I think it's on record of 3,500 years ago was the first time done. Still been done in Africa a lot. In Asia, done a slightly different way. Okay. And then in the West, we all slowly come to the idea. And people sell these capsules, crapsules they call them, dried poo in a capsule. What a wonderful business, selling poo. I wish that was my business. God, I'd love that. So FMT absolutely works. I have seen there is a lot of science on it, a lot of studies, like incredible rebounds for really bad issues from leaky gut, IBD, IBS, but mood and things you less associate it with. I mean, you can take the studies that I normally quote, like you can take the gut flora from obese mice and put in skinny mice, and the skinny mice get obese. But the same thing is happening with stress. Yeah, and that's like when we talk about obesity and we blame the diets and stuff and the way it's gone and sugar is increasing and it's hard to avoid it. Yeah, but there's a whole heap of other things coming in. There's a whole heap of
the reverse also true. If you take
sadly not that easy. That's exactly what everybody always asks.
I was ready to dance down those capsules.
Get with your skinny friends. Listen, this is going to sound a bit weird, but any chance you do a poo in a glass for me? So that would be great business actually as well. So what was it called? So, but it turns out you can do that with a lot of different things. And there's a girl called Mash Vet, and she has got the best anecdotal stories on her website, Humans and People, where, Margot, somebody her name is, and she says she goes to these huge conferences about gut issues, and there's all these mad drugs and big companies, and she comes along there as the person who does FMT, and she's on after this huge presentation, and she goes, yeah, I just kind of put my finger in this dog's bum and then put it in that dog's bum. Yeah, because it's a colonic. You're taking poo. The best way of doing FMT isn't by mouth, is by up the bum. So you get warm dog milkshake, a little bit of poo, a bit of warm water, and you fill the dog up, can take a liter of this liquid, and then you're trying to reset the dog's gut flora. Cats and dogs don't have an appendix, so they've no way of resetting their gut flora. So when you get this chronically gut sick dog, you get a puppy, you change his home, so he's in a new biome. He's a bit stressed, and stress hits you in the guts. If somebody jumps out from behind a wall, Brady, you don't go, huh! You wish you did. You just go, and you hold your stomach, and you make a stupid face. So that's what stress, cortisol, adrenaline, into the guts, and pumps your blood out your hands and feet. And then we over-vaccinate them. We give them lots of flea and worm treatments. We give them chemically preserved dry food. So chronically gut-sick dogs start at around 8, 10 weeks, 12 weeks of age. And then they come to us about 4, 5, 6 months old. And you've got this dog that's chronically ill, can't reset the gut flora. So FMT, for some of these cases where we couldn't get it right, it's like, go for FMT. And honest to God, maybe 3/4 of those dogs have big turnarounds. Mightn't work the first time. You have to hit them a couple of times. So I'm a
big fan. Does it matter what they're fed?
So yeah, there's 2 big companies out there doing it. One company, her dogs are vegan fed, and I didn't realize that. I didn't think to ask. She said they were fresh fed, and when I hear fresh fed and they're doing FMT and stuff, you naturally think they've done the research, and it's like, okay, and then it's a vegan fed dog, and I'm like, oh, so I've actually stopped recommending that, because that's a gut biome for a plant eater, in a carnivore system, which is just totally whole heap of stuff going on. I still think it would really work, because this microbiologist that I work with, she says, oh no, it's a top level thing, Conor, that will work. But it wouldn't work as well as an animal that's eating raw food. But the best biome comes from your own gut. They're called autogenous probiotics. Rare, hard to find, but companies are doing it. This is the microbiologist I'm talking to. Autogenous, so autogenous. It comes from your own body. So in other words, you get a poo sample of your own, and you stick it on the ice, dry ice, what do you call it? Cryo type thing. And now you've got your own gut flora. So when you need a probiotic, you get a probiotic from your own gut flora. Whoop, and they send it to you in the post. Nuts. This exists. Yeah, I know it exists. And so autogenous probiotics are like that's mere space station stuff. But the point is, big believer in FMT. I think it's great. But the probiotic side of things, which I'm definitely going to be touching on in the talk, people are just going mad about probiotics, and they're just giving them all the time, taking probiotics. Yes. And I feel myself moving towards, guys, I'm now moving towards, much like I am with antibiotics, it's like, take it easy. We've got studies showing the longer you take probiotics, not necessarily, we don't have long-term studies of taking probiotics. All we know is that your gut flora can be shifted if you give them enough of this new bacteria. How do you know what bacteria is right in your guts? Hundreds of different species of bacteria, thousands of viral particles, yeasts, all this stuff trying to live together, and you're just moving one type in there. You don't know what's needed at that time. So short-term studies show a few benefits, but long-term there's a few little issues. So I wanted to get into that. I think people are just using these long-term in dogs that are fine. It's like, that is not something I'd be putting in on a long-term basis. Yeah.
And I think that's right. I think that naturally, even for us, we don't want to rely on a supplement for our lifetime. We should be to sustain that health on our own. And I think people get very just scared with their dogs because they can't talk. They can't tell us how you're feeling, but you can see in their poop just how healthy that dog is or not.
Yeah. So that's the whole idea of testing, coming back to what you said at the start and getting normal controls for yourself. We never think to go, I mean, when you go for it, it's a pity that the vet health check each year is not a bit more adventurous than, let's just give him another vaccination. It's like, well, does he need the vaccination? Do a titer test. No, he doesn't. Well, we'll give him a health check anyway and just feel the dog. It's like, I do that every single night, and I've got a groomer, So it'd be great if the vet did bloods, and they said, come into us every 3 years, because that's what Wasava is saying for the vaccination. So if you wanted to do that, it's a bit better, but at least every 3 years, and you took bloods. And so it's like, there you go, $50, and let's have a look and keep those bloods normal. that is a good way of keeping an eye, and your gut flora tells you an awful lot. Also, a huge amount of metabolites, as Nikki is all over. I can't wait till she starts producing some papers on that. But lots of metabolites come out in your wee and poo. So we have all these stories of dogs smelling cancer in your wee, bladder cancer, and colorectal cancer in your poo. But it goes way beyond that. There's so many metabolites in there, from stress, histamine, inflammatory markers. Lots can be told from poo. And now people are starting to do studies. Nikki's starting to look into this as what we can use in dogs as a quick reference dip test. Ooh, look at that's gone red. That's not good. Yeah. Lots of those little quick tests at home. People don't realize how much stuff you can tell from these things. A lot of these kits are available. There's skin swabs that tell you what bacteria or yeast you have. Gut flora checks don't cost 50, 60 quid. So, I would like the FMT thing. The other company that does it, I won't name drop them, but they do dry and raw fed dogs. And the queue for the raw fed dog FMT is like 10 or 12 weeks. That should kind of tell you how busy, like, we're into that. Dry fed dogs mightn't be into that. The raw fed world, we're kind of more open to, like, oh yeah, poo in a capsule, let's go. So, we're making them very, very busy, but they have controls. They'll tell you what's normal in your dog. It's like, I'm not sure you know what's normal in my dog, but I do want your capsules, so great business. I love it. But I find it odious that the dry food companies are now putting in 1 or 2 probiotics into a product with chemical preservatives in it. I mean, that's chemical napalm for your gut flora. And they pop in 1 or 2 and they say, this is for gut health, probiotic gut health. And it's like every other ingredient in that is disastrous for gut health. And then they pop in this, it's like a bowl of Cheerios or, there's a cereal, but then some other horrible crap. And then they say, and we've added zinc. So, great. My kids have gone demented, 15 minutes later, but they've had a bit of extra zinc oxide,
And probiotics is such a huge topic. I wish we had more time to dive into that. And this quickly turned from AAFCO talk to poop talk. So I hope you guys have enjoyed all of this. I do see the questions coming in. We've got about, we've been going for 45 minutes. We got about 10 minutes left on this live. I do want you to tell your story. So send in these questions. Someone wants to know if Feeding Dogs is ever going to become an audiobook.
It is this year. This year it's going to be. I have a new website. If you don't mind, drconorbrady.com, conorbrady.com, and on there you'll see my courses and you'll see a few other bits and pieces that I'm doing. But very soon, I write long articles and I put them up on Facebook for some reason, and there's a select few hundred people that enjoy that sort of stuff, and so I'm going to move away from giving Facebook all my content. I'm going to start.
Well, that's interesting because every time I read your posts, and they are almost always quite long, I read it hearing in your voice. Like I hear your voice.
Yeah.
Are you going to narrate this book yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the problem. Look at the size of the bloody thing. So now what I'm doing is it's going to be the end of 2024. So it'll be 4 years old at that stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite some key bits. There hasn't been any mistakes highlighted to me. A couple of spelling mistakes here and there. That's going to happen. But crucially, none of the major points, and I made hundreds of them, there's been no vet that's come out and said, that's not true about pancreatitis. That's not true about bloat. The points I made about bloat are really, really important. It's like soluble fiber and crude fiber. That's where we're pointing the finger. And anyway, so I'm going to bring it in, revamp it a bit, put in all the new studies that people have found, because there's a lot of nerds out there and they just pop up a study like it's like I knew about it. I'm like, oh, that's juicy. Where'd you get that? And I just like bank that. I'm going to use that later. So I need to bring it up to speed. There's been a few studies published in the last few years. And I'm going to shorten it. And I'm also going to put a little bit more, like I had 2 editors with that book and both of them said, you can't say that. You can't say that. And so they took out a lot of this. I would have left it a little bit sharper. It would have been a bit more me in it. But they said, that's not going to work for the vets. And I'm like, I don't think this book is going to work for the vets. This book is, so on this, for the audio, you need to be a bit sharper. People don't want to read too much science on the audio. So I am going to do it. I'll do it this year. I'll have it out by the end of the year for definite.
Oh, wonderful. Definitely looking forward to that. And you guys know Conor is coming towards the end of this year to San Diego. So if you enjoyed this talk and you want to see him in person, make sure you look up the Feed Real Summit. Okay, we're going to try to run through some of these questions. This was asked earlier on. Can you talk about ingredients approved by AAFCO? Most holistic ingredients like medicinal mushrooms are not approved. I don't even know how to answer that question.
Yeah. It's look, the approval thing is kind of complicated because for example, there's a pet food it's called BD Brain Diet, made by Hill's Pet Food, and they made that. I can't remember. They came out with it in 2010, and there's a really interesting study behind it actually, where they compare dogs on regular dry food, and then they put in a couple of things: spinach, carrots, blueberries. That's the magic ingredients that help dogs think better. It's like, can we not just put that in dogs' food in the real form? And they put in grape pomace. And I'm like, grape pomace, what's that? Well, you know how the pet food industry absolutely loves using the bits that we can't eat. So corn gluten pulp, so they squish corn to make
beet pulp.
Beet pulp, all the crap we can't eat, soybean hull. I mean, who wants that in their food? And this new one is grape pomace. Now, we all know grape is highly poisonous to dogs, and so you've got this wine industry that produces huge amounts of grapes, and California is like, guys, we've got to sell this grape pomace, we can't just dump it. And the pet food companies go, yeah, we put garbage in our food, so why not? So the point is that grape pomace was never permitted, and still to this day it's not permitted. Doesn't mean it's not part of Hill's Pet Food. So I wouldn't have anybody say, oh, you shouldn't feed medicinal mushrooms because it's not permitted. I would say there is a vast number of ingredients. They come up with new stuff all the time. Soldier fly isn't permitted. In fact, none of the grubs, none of the insects are a permitted food ingredient by AAFCO. So soldier fly larvae, which is this new insect pet food thing, and the reason you're hearing about it so much is because there's so much money invested in it, and people are desperate to not, talk about the elephant in the room, which is, grass-fed beef is absolutely fine. That's not a carbon issue anyway. So that's a problem, but they don't give out about kibble and insect larvae. So there's many, many issues out there, and that medicinal mushrooms aren't recommended by AAFCO means absolutely nothing to me. This is a bunch of dry food companies who for 40 years said table scraps were bad for your dog, good for your kids. You couldn't put them into your dog's bowl. Table scraps. The same people will tell you raw meaty bones aren't a good ingredient. It's one of the most vital things you can give your dog. So what they have to say about medicinal mushrooms is utterly irrelevant. I would listen to, like, when Habib puts up something and he says, check out these 2 studies. The most aggressive form of cancer, and dogs lived a year longer with it just by taking some poxy mushrooms on top of dry food probably. And it's like, so, the benefits of these ingredients are incredible. And I think if you're listening to any of the speakers that are coming, or most nutritionists and anything the feed really are saying, that's probably got a good bit of science behind it. And you're only talking about a small amount. You're not talking about 30% of your food being this incredibly strange mushroom. You're talking about a light dusting here and there, particularly in times of need. Yeah, wonderful additions. And that AAFCO don't recommend it, nearly a badge of honor. Who cares what AAFCO have to say about nutrition?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. It always makes me laugh when Rodney comes out with a new video, and this last one he was like, broccoli is going to make your dog live longer. We all ran out to the store and we're chopping our broccoli.
Yeah, you're feeding broccoli wrong. It's like, oh, I'm going to have to bloody watch this now just to make, so the blueberry one is great. Habib has got an unbelievable knack of getting a message out there. He's just fabulous at it. I constantly send him messages going, I just wrote a 2,000-word article with about 20 studies in. He goes, nobody's reading that, bro. I was like, oh.
He does a 20-second video and it goes
viral. Yeah, that's it. He's so good for the movement. I mean, 4 million followers. He's bigger than bloody Beyonce. It's just so good. So thank God for him and Becca.
Michelle says she's got a 14-year-old dog that won't eat raw meaty bones and is picky about dehydrated. Any suggestions?
Yeah, like I'd say there's a lot of different bones out there, so maybe you're just focusing on beef and he doesn't really want beef. I would say very few animals will say no to a duck neck rolled in the pan. So if you wanted to cheat a little bit, you get this duck neck, delicious, or turkey neck, also delicious, and you get a hot pan and you roll the meat in you roll the duck neck in the hot pan. So the bone inside is still completely raw, but the outside is extremely tasty cooked meat, and you might even sprinkle it with salt because there isn't a vegan on the planet that can say no to that. Cooked meat with salt. And so you put that little bit on, good quality salt, deeply nutritious food ingredient. Raw feeders are not putting any salt in the dog's diet. The best way to give them salt is actually separate. So you've got the water and you've got slightly salty water, particularly in hotter parts of the state, or you're working your dogs, or they're stressed, or they're gut sick. You put out all your electrolytes. So a little bit of salt in water is a good idea. But the dog can take that as opposed to putting it on his food. But I do put it on their treats because I want them to work a bit harder. And I do put, if the dog didn't want to eat meaty bones, it's so important they eat those bones. I would try harder. I'd try a duck neck. And you also remove yourself from the situation. We used to have this in guide dogs all the time. And the problem was often, it starts off with some reason I didn't want the bone. but it ends up with you standing there going, do you like that bone? Do you like that? It's like you're going to the toilet, Ruby, and I'm going, are you going to the toilet, Ruby? And you're like, I was going to the toilet until you started talking to me. So sometimes it's our reaction. You're waiting for your kid to eat the food, and the kid sees that, and they're like, yeah, I'm not eating this, buddy. I've got you around my finger. So give them the bone, but separate yourself with something, a curtain, a door, pop them out the back garden, leave them alone. And they'll come back around to that or not. Some dogs don't, but if they don't, I'm nearly thinking, why aren't you eating that bone, buddy? Are your teeth bad? And if your teeth are really bad and painful, you need a vet. If he's not willing to put his teeth through a bone that's gone past, and the little red line is going to be angry looking just above those teeth. And so that needs veterinary attention, And,
sure. Some signs that we may not have noticed.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you mentioned the salt thing, because I think most things that people are adding in to meet the zinc and the vitamin E and the manganese requirements are probably not necessary. But I do agree there are a lot of people DIYing raw food and not adding that salt. Do you see that often?
Oh yeah, we just think it's bad. We think salt is dangerous. Gives you kidney disease or heart disease or something, which is nonsense. The science has done a flip-flop on that as well, because it's been tied up in ultra-processed food and terrible seed oils, and salt isn't the baddie we thought it was, but too much refined salt is not good for anybody. But don't forget, there's animals out there, lions, elephants, chimps, every animal out there, insects, go a long way to try and get salt. Type in Italian goats dam wall. I can't remember what the title of the video is. It's these goats that live in some part of Italy, and they walk up a dam wall, which is essentially vertical. They're just walking up it like it's a normal wall. She's like, come on, kids. And they're trying to get up to the little tiny bit of salt that's at the top so they can lick the salt off. So salt is a really valuable commodity out in the wild. It contains a whole heap of minerals, 80 minerals or something in some of the salts.
Mm-hmm. I would go so far to say, if you are feeding table scraps, things that you truly are eating on your own dinner table, then your dog is going to get some of that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Do you think you can do damage by adding probiotics to your dog's food if their gut is doing okay? I just don't think you need to. I think if the gut is doing okay, I wouldn't be putting in probiotics. On the plus side, any of the science that shows efficacy, so when there's actually an effect of putting in probiotics, the dose is way higher than you think it is. So most of the probiotics out there, 2 billion CFUs, 6 billion CFUs of something, colony forming units, that is. First of all, you got to get them to the gut flora. You got to get them to the intestines, which most people are putting their probiotics on food. So you're subjecting that life to the rigors of the dog's digestive system. It'll annihilate that probiotic. You want to give a probiotic separate to that. So separate to your dinner, and how you give a probiotic and stuff and timing, it's important. But dose is really important. You're trying to get troops to the guns. So you putting on a little bit of probiotics onto a food probably isn't going to change anything. I would just say it's entirely unnecessary, and I would treat it like antibiotics. I would say you're messing there with a system that we know nothing about. It's a garden, it's a flower bed, and you are not a gardener, and you're standing there with a whole heap of seeds going, I wonder what this is going to look like. Yeah. So it's a little bit complicated, and then people are using the wrong things. They're Espellardi, soil-based probiotics, incredible in the right dogs, but people are throwing them into different dogs. You don't understand what Espellardi does. So it needs kind of rectifying, but we're all guilty of it. As soon as one cool thing comes out, like I'm Googling, I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
And we're all, because we're such nerds for this subject, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. We learn, but the pendulum swings and then it comes back to a middle somewhere, so.
Sure. So I agree. I don't think you're doing any harm by adding it in, but you're probably not doing much good either. I remember a couple of years ago when I first had you on a live, you said to put the probiotic in a spoonful of yogurt.
Yes,
and
my favorite.
That's how you should.
Yeah, in a liquid. So you get a spoonful of full fat probiotic yogurt, the good stuff, fizzy, sour. You wish there was flavor in it and sugar, but so that's the good stuff. That's good for you, and the sourer, the better. That's kind of that fizz is the good stuff. So you get your little scoop of probiotic yogurt, you put in some water, make a little yogurty drink, and then you put in your probiotic. And so your probiotic takes 15 minutes to wake up because he's freeze dried. And then they wake up and they go, oh, yogurt. And then they eat that and then they poo everywhere. And it's the probiotic poo is what you're after. They're called postbiotics. Prebiotics is the food that they eat. Probiotics is the life themselves. And postbiotics is the stuff they produce. So a cow doesn't digest grass. A cow houses with this enormous rumen, houses bacteria that eats grass. And then the bacteria produce butyrates and fat, and the cow absorbs that. That's how she gets so big eating grass. It's not because she can digest grass and get the protein out of it. The bacteria do all the work for the cow and all those sorts of animals, So yeah, like the whole, like even that question there is interesting, will spirulina, chlorella, mushrooms help the gut flora? Every single thing you put in there will affect your gut flora, because your gut flora do everything. You're 10 times more them than they are you. They control everything. And from a behavior point of view, it's so interesting. We say like 90% of your serotonin comes from your gut. 100% of your serotonin does, because the other 10% is your gut flora up through the vagus nerve to your brain going, release some serotonin. So it's in complete control of that. It's in complete control of your happy centers. Now we know they produce tryptophan, which we thought they only came from food. They produce all your GABA, which is the thing that keeps you happy and sane. So when you've got IBS, IBD, your gut flora goes to hell, your GABA goes to hell. And so what happens is you get these dogs that are flighty and anxious and reactive. And trainers are called, so let's train the dog and train him to be better and calmer. And it's like, no, his gut flora is shattered. None of the happy head compounds are coming from this dog, which is the whole controversy with the SSRI industry that is smashing us. I mean, we've never taken more than, 30% of adults take it. It was like, the problem is you never thought about the fact that most of this stuff is supposed to come from your gut. So you got to get the foundation right. Like, training a dog that has a hyperactivity, or he's mentally not right, training your way out of that is kind of like when you're feeding dry food. It's kind of like, kids' birthday party, and you bring out the crap food, and 15 minutes later, the kids are hopping off the walls, and you're like, come outside and lock the door. Awful creatures, but that's the crap food you serve them. You serve them all these colors and sugar and something. That's what happens when you do that. Now, you wouldn't take out their homework, half an hour into this madness and try to do homework with them. That's what you're doing training a dog whose foundation isn't right. If his guts are wrong, and invariably they will be if he's highly stressed, and your guts are going to be wrong. It's a circle. You got to get that foundation right. You have a month's work to do first. Calm, stop your training, stop the fly ball, stop whatever you're doing, working the dog, stop walking past number 10 where the dog is that scares him, whatever, stop everything. Just give him a bowl of chicken soup, get him rice, give him a hug, and then get that gut perfectly right. And then you can start thinking about training. So that's a vital cog. That's a good message I like to kind of get out there. And because everything you put in there is going to affect the gut flora. So does spirulina affect the gut flora? Absolutely. Love spirulina. Although I actually put it separate to the bowl now, because spirulina absorbs toxins and stuff. It's so cool. It's such a good ingredient. But there's a great book called Toxic by Neil Nathan. The 2/3 of it I really couldn't understand. Bren loved it, so that puts you on edge, because Bren loves the nerdy stuff. And I'm more of a kind of an elevator pitch going, just give me the summary. Somebody just read me a summary. But the first.
How are you feeding this spirulina separately? Just powder on the side?
Yes, that's more zoopharmacology stuff, because it absorbs toxins. So like if you're living in places where there's black mold and stuff, spirulina, chlorella, bentonite clay, they're the three he talks about all the time. And you can leach the heavy metals out of your body. There's protocols for getting heavy metals out from eating too much tuna or whatever you're getting it from, and whatever. So they put it separate to the bowl. Dogs like it dry or in paste form. You're not quite sure which one. So you get a little plate, and you put some dry stuff there, and you put some wet stuff there, some in paste form. And if he eats the paste form, you give him more. It's like the dog knows he needs that. It's one of the reasons we think they do geophagy. Like where a really gut sick dog, he's eating poo, coprophagy, and he eats lots of grass. That's very common. But also they start to eat soil, and you're thinking, what is in that soil? It could be anything. It could be salt. It could be this kind of humus and all this kind of cool stuff. It could be the soil-based probiotics. But now we're thinking maybe algae and whatnot, because a gut sick dog will eat a ferocious amount of spirulina or chlorella, both the same, really. Chlorella is probably better and cheaper. Yeah. And then people say, how much should I give them? Because it's full of iron. And so you'll get these dark green slimy things, but studies show toxins stick to it. They adsorb. So spirulina adsorbs. So they stick to the outside of it. So when you're gut sick or you're fighting a yeast infection, when we're doing a yeast kill in a dog, it'll produce a lot of toxins, and it can make the dog sick. It's called a Herx effect. So making the dog better makes him really sick for a moment. And the worry is that the owner runs down to the vets and go, oh shit, I've broken him. And the vet goes, I told you not to do it yourself. This is what happens. Actually, that is killing the yeast, and the yeast is releasing all these toxins. So something like spirulina or bentonite clay stops that. It absorbs all this, and you'll get this horrible poo. You'll get this dark green slimy poo, and they're like, Conor, is this normal? And I'm like, yeah, I hope it is. How much spirulina do you give him? Like a tablespoon. It's like, oh, okay. So you put it separate to the bowl, like you would garlic, like you would a few other bits and pieces, where if you think he needs it, he'll take it. And gut sick dogs will take garlic, but healthy dogs rarely take a bit of garlic. So I like that kind of stuff. That's Zoo Pharmacozy. That's Caroline Ingraham. That the girl I work with, Karen, is doing a lot of work on that, and everything she says is so interesting. It's just like, oh, there's a whole world of things I know nothing about. She's a big believer in, you got your food and you got your medicines. Stop putting your herbal stuff into the product. You know nothing about what he needs right there and then, like the way I would say about probiotics. So I still can't help but put his medicines in his food because it's like, just take that and you might get better. But she's like, no, offer the right thing, he will take it, which is
Sure.
yeah, it's a skill I don't have, but I'm definitely going to learn that now in the next year or two. I'm going to get tight on that. One more question. Sorry, Ruby, I'll cut you off.
No, you're good. I want to just circle back to AAFCO because this is another fear that I see people who have puppies and are afraid to do that DIY, and they say, well, just make sure that it's balanced. How can you recommend someone who is wanting to wean their pup to a raw diet now, knowing all these things about complete and balanced?
I would say if I had a pup and I'm coming, if there's any fear in you, okay, there is complete raw dog food out there made by people who have given it way more thought than you have, and they produce products that they're afraid people will catch them out on, so they've given it a good bit of thought. So the better products, the ones that, they're in the, let's face it, they're probably more expensive. Okay, cheaper foods can have problems. Cheaper raw dog foods have issues. There's no doubt. I'm talking to a Canadian producer there and testing some of the competitors, and it's like double the fat of what they said was on it. That's a major problem, because it's not just the fact that there's loads of calories and fat in your dog. It's the fact that all your nutrients that you're looking for are in the meat and the cartilage and the bone. So, you get your fat soluble vitamins from fat, but all the other stuff, your mineral zinc, is in your meat. So you get less of that. The more fat that goes up, the less so you can get malnutrition to malabsorption, particularly in young animals. So, that point aside, I would say if you came at this with fear and you were worried, I wouldn't start off DIYing. You're putting too much stress on yourself. You're going to freak yourself out, and you're going to worry needlessly about it. Okay. But I can't tell you not to worry. Don't, relax. I'm afraid of spiders. It's grand. Don't worry about it. I can't tell someone that, So if you're worried about DIYing, don't start with a DIY. I would start with a complete raw dog food, decent quality one. And in my back of my head, I'm saying it's good, but it's not perfect, that complete raw. So what I would do is I'd buy a complete raw, and I would change it around a little bit. Give them a bit of duck one day, a complete turkey, something with a bit of fish in it, bit of beef. And I'm moving around. And then, maybe a month or two later, I'm trying a different supplier just to compare. And you go, oh, I much prefer this stuff, actually. And then you're trying that and the duck, and you're moving it. It's about variation. Minerals, nutrients don't come perfectly even in nature in every single meal. It's just nonsense. Right. You go out with the lads, you eat pizza for 2 days, and you go back on Monday and you go, oh my God, I need a salad, So it doesn't come perfectly uniform. You don't need to provide everything the dog needs in every meal, but you do have that hangover from dry food. So don't be forcing yourself. Don't be stressing. Start with the complete raw dog food. And the natural progression from that is, messing around with the products there, but I'm adding stuff to that bowl. I'm thinking, I'm going to crack an egg into this food. I'm going to give my Cocker Spaniel perfect size for a chicken thigh. Love chicken thighs. They cost half nothing. Best cut of meat, loads of meat, bit of cartilage, bone. So, sometimes I forget to take his food out. How many times you do that? And it's like 2 chicken thighs into the back garden. Eat that, buddy. And he's gone, and he's eating that. And that's a great meal. Pity about the dog. He only gets chicken thighs for dinner. I mean, bloody hell. That is a great meal. So start off with the fact that if complete raw was 80% of his diet, then you can do your own little bits and pieces for 20% of the diet. Rapidly, that becomes complete raw in the morning, my DIY in the evening. Fine. Some people are vegetarian and they want to give the dog 25%, 33% plant matter. Grant, it's your dog. As long as the large part of his diet is spot on, you're not going to make a whole mess of you, because we don't know. We don't know what's perfect for the dog, Right. But, so I think start with the complete raws to take the edge off, and know that that's been thought about, so that's done. The organ meat's very hard to find. Liver, heart, kidney, where are you going to get that? Nobody wants to handle that stuff. Smells disgusting. Kidney, ugh. So complete raw, add stuff to the bowl and start increasing your own additions. Oh, a tin of sardines. Can I scrape my plate? I can. And you're adding in your bits, and you're getting brave, and you're giving them a raw meaty bone, and you'll look back in 3 or 4 months and you'll wonder, what the hell was I worried about? Yeah. But we were all there. We were all nervous at the start, going, "Ooh, raw chicken. That doesn't sound right."
Yeah. And I'll also add, come to one of our workshops, because we teach you how to make your food at home, and it's a 2-hour session. It's really fun, and after it, you're like, I don't know what I was worried about.
I love that idea. Do you do it like are you in like a kitchen, or you're walking them through their kitchen, or how does that work?
Well, so our lead researcher and writer, Kay Stewart, who you met last year when we were in the UK, she teaches the course, and there's just 8 people in the workshop, very, very small, and everyone's joined from home. They go out, shop for their ingredients, come in, and we show you how to put it all together.
That's class.
Yeah. Lots of fun. We're going to be teaching that workshop at the Feed Rail Summit as well.
Good. All right, cool. Yeah. Will I be there? Will I be doing it?
Yeah, I'm going to make you handle all of the green tripe and pick up.
Oh, lovely. Love a bit of green tripe. I mean, that's the most hideous ingredient.
Rodney did it last year. He was a good sport about it.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. 12 years of veggie. I'm struggling to get back to. I am eating a lot of meat at the moment. Obviously, my embarrassing. I don't want to tell my embarrassing story. I'll save it for another time. I'll do this question here.
Yes.
If wolf pups are weaned on mothers regurgitating, does a mother dog eat differently to support her pups? Yeah, that's that's the sort of questions you like. That's who knows. I bet. First of all, do dogs time their pups would be the first thing, because if your pups are born in springtime, you're going to have higher fat animals. You're going to have a lot more babies being eaten, which are the only fatty animals that are out there. And those fatty animals will be fed to the pups. Mum's milk will be fattier. You're going to have bigger, stronger, faster pups in spring. If your pups are born in winter, it's just a different kettle of fish. So there's all, as much as people like to kind of poo on astrology and that kind of stuff, there is some really interesting studies to show what times of year you're born have different effects on the shape of you and your mental state and everything. So which is really born in summer, born in winter. And so that's interesting enough. There's a few little bits and pieces that kind of stop me from completely slagging them off all the time. And so I got told off actually by Anaheim Borgen. Safe she's not listening to this. My absolute idol, Professor Anaheim Borgen.
I love her.
Yeah, I love her so much. And she one night we were sitting around having a few glasses of wine, and I'm sitting there just talking with her and a couple of other big people. And it's like, it's just, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe just how lucky am I. Somebody starts talking about astrology, and I went, pfft. And she puts her glass of wine down. She goes, "What do you know about astrology?" And I went, "What? Why is my mum giving out to me in front of everybody?" And I'm like, and she goes, tell us what you know. And I came up with a couple of little bits and pieces. And she goes, "Yeah," but she goes, "You do know that we came from the sea, don't you?" She goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "Everybody mates at the same time in the sea, full moon, it's just cloudy." And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "And you've heard all the other stuffs about, your bones get sore and, the gravitational pull of the moon at the time, and people feel it in their bones and that kind of, all that." Oh yeah, it's a big thing. And nursing homes will tell you things, and wards of certain people, there's lots of little bits and pieces. She goes, all that, and I did know those bits. And she goes, and different times of year when you're born it has a market effect on you, purely just by what nutrients are around at a minimum. Probably less so now because we're spoiled so rotten. But vitamin D in wintertime, for example, that's going to have an effect. We know the lower in vitamin D are, the worse your mood. So maybe if you're deficient in vitamin D, you'll come out a slightly moodier individual, than you would be if you're born in summer. Yeah, I've got everything I want in life. So anyway, the question was the pups being born. Yeah, that's a great question, but the pups are kind of staggered a bit. They are, as much as people think they just drop pups all the time, this is not the case. Way more pups are born at the right time of year. You're coming into autumn time, there's a bit of fruit around, and they might take a bit of that, and that's all timed for a reason. So yes, I do think that mums would be feeding certain things to the pups. I do believe that. There's a great video of coyotes bringing a dry leg now and again. They killed some animal that they can't drag the whole thing back, but they brought the bones back for the pups to play with. And I thought that's perfect.
I've seen that. They've also, it's called caching. Like they'll bury it and save it away for some time until they've got to go back. And
cool. Yeah. So who knows on when they catch an animal, and perhaps the last thing they eat is all the fat because they want their pups to have that. And so when they regurgitate, it's fat. I mean, a wolf's scat, when you look at how a wolf poos, the plug of his butt is kind of like hair and nails and a skeleton and whatever the last thing was he ate, that's there, and that comes out, the undigestible stuff. And then a normal looking poo, and then the last poo would be that black tarry bit sometimes that you see dogs doing. And so that's kind of a normal poo for a dog, but I bet you things are staggered in a certain way. They know exactly what they're doing, and mum knows, just, I need to bring this back from my stuff. If they're not carrying a big fatty lump of meat, if they're going to regurgitate it because the pups don't have any teeth yet, they need to eat it in slop form. Yeah, I bet they do. I would say, though, we're giving them such high quality diets. Like when you give them raw dog food and the meat, fat, organ meats, there was very few wolves getting fed as well as those dogs are. So it's nearly irrelevant because your dogs are so spoiled. I mean, they've got such good food that it's nearly irrelevant. These dogs are coming back and like, you've got an antelope butt and there's 10 of you eating it, and good luck trying to get a complete meal out of that. You know, I got the tail. What's in the tail? Nothing. I'm hungry. So, you know, that's the way it is for those guys. And I think our dogs are just like the luckiest animals on the planet. Certainly the fresh and raw fed, cooked fed dogs are anyway, you know, very lucky.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, if you guys enjoyed this talk, you should check out Dr. Conor Brady's website. I love that you got a new name on there. You've got some classes available, don't you?
Yep, I am. I'm going to have a little membership soon because I'm going to create this. I'm going to have a little hub where I'm just going to start dumping my thoughts in there, jumping on there to do my kind of stuff, as opposed to giving Facebook all the attention. When Facebook had a blip there a few weeks ago, or a few days ago, did it happen to you as well?
Yep.
Oh yeah, a little bit of panic. And I thought, oh God, they found me out, because, you know, I talk a lot of stuff and some of it is going to aggravate people, the wrong people. So I kind of thought, oh my God, it's gone. And actually, I kind of panicked because it's whatever, 60,000 people and, you know, 10, 15,000 on Instagram. And I think, oh my God. And I cold sweat. I was thinking, oh my God, my business. And after about 10 seconds later, I actually felt really calm. And I just thought, at last, I'm free. It's like, okay, now I'm just going to have to focus on my website and making sure people know about me. I'll get a second book out. I started getting all these cool ideas. I was like happy. And then it came back up. I was like, oh, I'm back in. You know, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm trapped. So I'm going to create a little hub. I've got my own little AI on that website, by the way. It's still free. It costs me 10 cents every time you ask it a question. But I've trained up that AI with my book, all my consults, every article I've ever written. Yeah. And so people can use that for free. So enjoy. It's good fun because it's about to go into the membership as well, and a few other bits and pieces. So yeah, I'm enjoying that project at the moment. That's a bit of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, we are looking forward to seeing you this October in San Diego.
Can't wait to see you again.
Yes.
Really cool.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks everyone for joining in. This will be available for replay later, and hopefully Conor will have you back on sometime in the summer.
Absolutely. You will. Absolutely.
Cheers. Bye, guys.